to my pass, officer.
There we go.
I'll come to my pass.
Keep jammed. Give me your hand.
Yeah.
Give me your hand.
Picture a warm Tuesday afternoon in June of 2023. The clock strikes exactly 2:30 as the midday sun beats down on the Toddington Services along the bustling M1 motorway. It is the kind of ordinary, unremarkable rest stop where weary travelers pause to grab a quick coffee, stretch out their cramped legs and prepare for the long drive ahead. Among the endless sea of mundane traffic, a heavy commercial lorry slowly navigates into a parking space. To the untrained observer, it is merely another routine delivery vehicle making its daily rounds. Yet, the atmosphere imperceptibly shifts the moment a sleek car glides into the adjacent spot. Behind the wheel sits 29-year-old Ahmed Omar, a figure deeply entrenched within London's clandestine underground economy. In the glaring light of day, while completely oblivious motorists stroll past holding their snacks and drinks, a seemingly innocuous exchange occurs. Two modest boxes are casually lifted from the deep shadows of the lorry's immense trailer and placed securely into the trunk of Omar's waiting vehicle. What neither participant in this quiet, swift transaction comprehends is the invisible, inescapable net already drawn tightly around them. Highly trained plainclothes investigators have been holding their breath in the surrounding vehicles for hours, their eyes locked on this exact stretch of tarmac, waiting for this specific culmination of events. Concealed within those two unassuming boxes lies a staggering 36 kilograms of illicit narcotics. Furthermore, tucked away deep inside the cavernous Belgian lorry, an additional 155 kilograms wait in the darkness. We are looking at a combined illicit street value hovering around an astonishing $19.2 million. For most law enforcement careers, a seizure of this magnitude would be the crowning achievement, the final chapter of a grueling pursuit. However, the most compelling twist in this narrative is that this monumental interception was never the ultimate prize. It was merely a single, fractured piece of a colossal puzzle that would inevitably drag authorities into the shadowy depths of the United Kingdom's most extensive illicit vehicle dismantling network. We are about to uncover an incredibly sophisticated operation, generating unimaginable wealth, an enterprise directly linking over 117 vanished automobiles. This same syndicate was brazenly distributing compromised safety features to entirely innocent families, operating a vast, interconnected underworld enterprise right beneath the noses of the general public for years. How does a criminal machine of this sheer scale exist in plain sight without triggering a single alarm? Before we unravel the intricate threads of this massive syndicate, take a moment to hit that subscribe button and leave a comment below sharing exactly where in the world you are tuning in from today. Whether you are watching from the United Kingdom, across Europe, or anywhere else on the globe, your location matters to this community. If you are captivated by deep investigative narratives that expose the hidden gears of organized enterprises the mainstream media rarely touches, you have found your permanent home. Welcome to the investigation. Let us transport ourselves away from the bustling motorway and delve into the heart of the West Midlands, specifically the industrial corridors of Birmingham between the years 2017 and 2023. To any casual observer, or even a diligent local inspector passing by, the individuals orchestrating this vast enterprise bore absolutely no resemblance to the architects of a sprawling underworld syndicate. They presented themselves impeccably as legitimate, hard-working businessmen, deeply invested in the routine trade of vehicle repair and resale. At the absolute center of this meticulously crafted illusion stood Nadim Assad. Legal prosecutors would ultimately define his role as the undisputed visionary and operational commander, the singular mind calculating precisely how heavily damaged automobiles were sourced, directing the complex logistics of component distribution, and overseeing the seamless processing of every single asset. Operating closely alongside his directives was Mohammed Nadim, an individual entirely dedicated to the physical movement and intricate logistics of both the vehicles and their separated components throughout the expanding business. Meanwhile, Zahir Hussain managed the highly sensitive acquisition and integration of illicitly obtained automotive elements, and Aman Zamir took charge of the physical processing and reconstruction phases across the entire network. On paper, and to the keen eyes of tax authorities, their bustling enterprise was a beacon of lawful commerce. Their primary method of operation involved purchasing heavily compromised cars from officially recognized, fully regulated salvage auctions. These were vehicles that traditional insurance corporations had officially declared complete write-offs following severe traffic incidents. Participating in these public auctions is a perfectly standard, completely legal practice, utilized daily by independent mechanics, small-scale garage owners, and even passionate hobbyists seeking restoration projects. Consequently, when Nadim Assad and his trusted associates continuously appeared at these established auction houses, aggressively bidding on severely damaged frames, absolutely no one raised a single red flag. They possessed every piece of requisite documentation, from official auction receipts and pristine logbooks, to comprehensive sales histories, projecting an impenetrable facade of legitimacy. Yet, what financial investigators and law enforcement would systematically uncover was a highly sophisticated methodology, where these battered frames served merely as the ultimate camouflage for an entire enterprise, far more insidious. Once these official write-offs were legally acquired, they supplied the syndicate with the one indispensable tool required for their survival: valid, government-issued legal documentation. This vital paperwork essentially created a ghost identity, allowing the completely reconstructed vehicles to effortlessly breeze through official regulatory inspections that would normally detect irregularities. However, behind the heavily secured metal doors of their workshops, the extensive repairs were absolutely not being completed with freshly manufactured, factory-certified elements. Instead, the necessary components were being systematically extracted from illicitly acquired vehicles and seamlessly fed directly back into the official rebuilding process. This was a highly targeted procurement strategy, operating essentially as an illicit catalog. If a specific mechanical core, advanced electronic control unit, or interior safety feature was required to finalize a lucrative rebuild, an exact matching vehicle out in the world would be identified and swiftly acquired. They completely avoided the cliché of operating out of derelict, abandoned warehouses on the forgotten edges of town. Instead, this syndicate functioned boldly out of fully registered business addresses scattered directly across Birmingham, including multiple bustling premises in Digbeth, specifically along Charles Henry Street and Cheapside, as well as highly active units situated on Grove Road in Sparkhill. This was not a chaotic, disorganized garage setup. When authorities eventually breached the perimeters, they discovered a sprawling infrastructure that utilized hundreds of massive commercial storage units. Out of 250 shipping containers rigorously examined, approximately 30 were packed floor to ceiling with meticulously catalogued, illicitly sourced mechanical elements, all neatly preserved and waiting for immediate deployment. While the sprawling Birmingham syndicate was quietly integrating illicit components into freshly minted legal identities, an entirely different shadow operation was silently unfolding hundreds of miles to the south. Between February and October of 2023, premium automobiles began vanishing into thin air from private driveways across the affluent southern English counties of Hampshire, Dorset, and Wiltshire. These stealth acquisitions followed a chillingly precise pattern. The extractions were strictly nocturnal. While unsuspecting families slept peacefully in the rooms just above, their most valuable assets were being spirited away from directly outside their front doors. There were no shattered windows, no blaring alarms piercing the night, and absolutely no signs of forced entry. Only a haunting silence. By the time the morning sun rose, the driveways were barren. In a remarkably brief, 8-month window, an astonishing 107 luxury vehicles simply ceased to be where their owners left them. At the undeniable center of this sophisticated extraction ring were George Barry and Benjamin Cross. Investigative authorities would eventually identify these two Southampton locals as the masterminds, the precise architects coordinating exactly which targets to acquire, and the clandestine routing of the assets afterward, supported heavily by physical operatives like Bradley Paddock. What made this crew terrifyingly effective was their strict discipline. They never settled for random, opportunistic grabs. Their sights were exclusively set on premium models, equipped with advanced keyless ignition systems, targeting top-tier Range Rovers, Bentleys, and Mercedes. These meticulously planned operations relied entirely on digital exploitation that the vast majority of owners were completely oblivious to. The syndicate utilized highly specialized signal-boosting relay equipment. Allow me to explain how this invisible breach occurs. One operative discreetly positions themselves dangerously close to the exterior walls of your home, utilizing a device to capture the faint digital pulse emitting from your key fob resting indoors. A second operative stands beside the targeted vehicle, receiving that intercepted frequency. The car's internal computer is instantly tricked into believing the authorized key is physically present. The heavy doors unlock, the engine hums to life, and the operative glides away into the darkness. Furthermore, digital forensics revealed the deployment of advanced signal jammers, technology explicitly designed to block the locking mechanism entirely when owners initially pressed their fobs. Imagine the profound psychological shock of walking outside to start your morning commute, only to find an empty void where your livelihood once stood. For over 100 individuals, this absolute nightmare became a stark reality. The devastation extended far beyond the mere loss of transportation. Consider the heart-wrenching case of a local tradesman whose customized van was silently rolled away. Secured inside were $10,000 worth of highly specialized tools he had spent an entire career accumulating. This single, calculated act stripped away his ability to provide for his family, resulting in an economic devastation exceeding $40,000. In courtroom testimony after courtroom testimony, victims expressed a lasting sense of intense violation and profound vulnerability. Have you ever experienced a similar loss? As authorities assembled the fragmented pieces of the sprawling Birmingham enterprise, the investigation took a severe turn, unearthing a reality far more unsettling than the mere trafficking of illicitly obtained automotive parts. Deep within the forensic analysis of the recovered assets, a chilling revelation emerged. A significant number of these reconstructed vehicles had already seamlessly re-entered the public roadways, entirely masking a severe, hidden peril. The courtroom proceedings shone a spotlight on one particularly alarming instance involving a seemingly standard Volkswagen Golf. This specific automobile had been successfully offloaded to a completely unaware purchaser for slightly over $10,000. To the new owner, this transaction appeared flawlessly legitimate, professionally restored insurance write-off, accompanied by pristine documentation and flawless mechanical performance. However, when highly trained forensic specialists later dismantled and scrutinized this exact vehicle, they uncovered an intense and heart-wrenching hazard. The integral airbag systems, the primary line of defense in a collision, were heavily compromised and fundamentally incapable of deploying. Allow the gravity of that situation to truly resonate. An everyday individual exchanged $10,000 for what they believed was a secure mode of transportation. They navigated daily routines, commuting to employment and transporting children to local schools, completely oblivious to the unseen danger lurking within the steering column. They operated under the false assurance that if an unfortunate event were to occur on the highway, the embedded safety mechanisms designed to shield them from a fatal act would function as engineered. Suddenly, this complex investigation was no longer confined to the realm of high-stakes financial deception or sophisticated property extraction. The narrative had drastically escalated into an immediate, wide-scale threat to public safety, placing countless innocent lives in direct jeopardy. Law enforcement emphasized that these unsuspecting buyers possessed absolutely no method of detecting these critical failures. Externally, the automobiles were immaculate. Their performance was exceptionally smooth. Yet, hidden beneath the polished dashboards, the crucial electronic components had been hastily harvested from illicitly procured vehicles and improperly installed without a shred of rigorous safety testing or official certification. For the lead investigators, this staggering discovery fundamentally altered the trajectory of the entire case. The pressing questions that kept detectives awake at night multiplied exponentially. Exactly how many of these compromised machines had successfully slipped through the cracks and been purchased by the general public? How many unsuspecting families were currently navigating the motorways, entirely unaware that their safety systems were nothing more than decorative shells? Had any severe incidents already transpired, where these flawed mechanisms failed to protect the occupants from an unfortunate event? These haunting inquiries propelled the search teams forward with an unprecedented level of urgency. As the meticulously coordinated raids expanded across the industrial sectors of the city, the sheer industrial magnitude of the hazard became undeniably clear. Officers systematically breached and secured over 250 commercial shipping containers. Within this sprawling labyrinth, they documented 30 units crammed end-to-end, with illicitly sourced engines, complex gearboxes, and the very airbag modules that were meant to preserve lives, all stockpiled for future illicit reconstructions. For years, this interconnected enterprise operated with frightening efficiency, but every sophisticated underworld syndicate inevitably possesses a hidden vulnerability. In this particular investigation, the critical breakthrough did not originate from high-level intelligence agencies, but directly from the victims themselves. A determined individual residing in Derby experienced the intense violation of having his vehicle silently extracted from his property. Unlike the vast majority who suffered this severe loss and felt entirely helpless, he chose a highly proactive countermeasure. Utilizing embedded digital tracking technology, he successfully traced the exact geographic coordinates of his vanished property, straight to an unassuming location tucked away in Sparkhill, Birmingham. When this digital trail was handed to local authorities, it provided investigators with the exact piece of the puzzle they had been desperately seeking. A definitive, physical bridge connecting a freshly reported overnight theft directly to a facility actively engaged in the illicit reconstruction process. Simultaneously, dedicated officers were systematically reviewing completely stagnant cold cases when a remarkable discovery was made. One such file detailed the disappearance of a premium Mercedes SL 400, valued at an estimated $70,000, which had vanished back in 2017. The trail had gone completely, utterly dark for years. However, fresh intelligence gathered during the initial Sparkhill inquiries guided specialized teams to execute a targeted search of a specific commercial garage situated in Digbeth. Astonishingly, resting quietly within those walls was that exact Mercedes. It had not been shipped overseas or dismantled beyond recognition. It had been seamlessly integrated and maintained within the Syndicate's closed ecosystem for years, passing through various locations linked to the repair network. This singular revelation was monumental. Armed with these undeniable connections, law enforcement initiated an extensive, highly covert surveillance operation, blanketing multiple premises. Dedicated officers meticulously monitored vehicle shipments, logging the precise, daily movements of key individuals, and constructing a comprehensive, undeniable map of how these diverse locations interacted. By the time the official search warrants were finalized, the authorities were absolutely, undeniably certain they were dismantling a highly synchronized corporate entity, not pursuing random, isolated infractions. When the command was finally given to move in, the execution was swift and overwhelming, occurring simultaneously across numerous locations throughout Birmingham. Elite teams breached heavily secured garages, expansive industrial units, and secretive storage sites in perfect unison. As officers advanced, their body-worn cameras documented every critical second, capturing sprawling workshops where illicitly acquired automotive parts were scattered across oily floors and heavy-duty workbenches. Several locations were actively operating at the moment of the breach, with specialized tools still warm and compromised cars in mid-reconstruction. Chaos briefly erupted as suspects attempted a desperate escape. In one highly dramatic sequence captured directly on video, a man Zamir sprinted from an active yard. The second, authorities breached the perimeter. His flight was remarkably brief. He quickly found himself hopelessly trapped between a heavy commercial van and a solid wall, entirely unable to evade the officers closing in around him. Inside the facilities, the painstaking process of meticulously cataloging the immense, overwhelming scale of the illicit enterprise finally began in earnest. With the physical infrastructure of the enterprise dismantled, the relentless pursuit transitioned from chaotic workshops to the halls of Birmingham Crown Court in 2019. The magistrate outlined the staggering scale of the illicit network, describing it as highly organized, intensely deliberate, and sustained for immense financial gain. Nadam Assad, the undisputed architect, faced the most severe consequence, receiving a substantial 7-year prison sentence. Mohammed Nadeem was handed 6 years, Zahir Hussain received 4.5, and Aman Zamir was secured for 5 years, plus an additional 3 months for his physical resistance against arresting officers. The reckoning did not end with incarceration. The judicial system pursued their illicit wealth through complex confiscation proceedings. Nadim Assad was legally compelled to surrender over $114,000 after failing to explain suspicious financial deposits. His conspirators were similarly drained, culminating in the official seizure of well over $183,000 from just 3 central figures. Meanwhile, the Southern Extraction Syndicate faced its own inevitable collapse. The extensive investigation, requiring over 12,000 rigorous hours of intelligence gathering across 7 distinct law enforcement agencies, culminated at Southampton Crown Court late in 2023. George Barry was sentenced to 56 months. Benjamin Cross received the heaviest penalty of 64 months, a direct result of his documented willingness to deliberately interfere with the ongoing investigation. Bradley Paddock was assigned 36 months. In total, 13 individuals were convicted for their roles in the nighttime acquisitions, effectively crushing the regional operation. This brings us full circle to that fateful Tuesday on the M1 motorway, the critical nexus point where the sheer depth of this underworld ecosystem was fully exposed. The international narcotics couriers met their fate at Luton Crown Court in 2024. Rudy Claus was handed a 20-year sentence, reflecting the severe societal devastation caused by his massive commercial smuggling. Ahmed Omar received nearly 9 years behind bars. We are looking at 3 distinct, complex investigations, unmasking 3 highly specialized criminal sectors, all flowing into one interconnected underworld economy. The industrial-scale dismantlers in the Midlands, the silent nocturnal extractors in the southern counties, and the international smugglers utilizing commercial transit. They all shared the same foundational traits: extreme patience, rigid organization, and the terrifying ability to operate flawlessly in plain sight. Authorities invested years into covert surveillance, because dismantling an entire ecosystem requires absolute precision. But as the heavy courtroom doors close on this specific network, a profound, lingering question remains to haunt us. If a singular syndicate can quietly move millions in illicit automotive assets and narcotics across international borders without triggering an alarm for years, what other shadow enterprises are currently thriving right next door? Leave your thoughts below regarding these extensive investigations, press that like button if this deep dive transformed your perspective, and subscribe to Dark Truth Files for more intense, uncompromising explorations into the hidden realities of modern organized syndicates. Stay incredibly vigilant out there, and we will definitely see you in the next deep investigation.